Hey, everybody, welcome back for another episode of the Light After Trauma podcast, a podcast for trauma survivors by trauma survivors. I am your host, Alyssa Scolari, and I am so excited about today's guest. We have Dr. Kylie Burton with us. Dr. Kylie is a functional medicine specialist who turns normal labs into answers, healing, and hope. And I am very happy to have you here with us. Thank you so much. How are you?
Thanks for having me, Alyssa. I'm doing great. It's a sunny, bright Tuesday in a cold Utah atmosphere right now, but we got the sunshine, so it's good.
Yeah, it's cold over here in Jersey today, too. I'm like, it was so nice, and now it's a little cold, but spring is coming, so it's like hard to be in a funk because spring is coming. The pandemic is hopefully ending.
Dwindling. Yes.
Yes. So I am so excited to have you on today because I, as many of the listeners know, I am a big fan of functional medicine. And over the last, I want to say like 3 to 4 months, functional medicine has truly changed my quality of life after being told by doctor after doctor that they have no clue why I feel the way that I feel. Yes, we don't know what's wrong with you. So I was like, as soon as I started to really like go on my journey and realize like the mind body connection and how much of my trauma was playing a role in my symptoms and etc., I was like, I need to have somebody on to talk about this. So I am really excited to dive into this today. And I guess my first question for you would be, I guess first you can elaborate a little bit more on kind of like who you are and what you do in the field and like what is functional medicine?
Yeah, so I specialize in helping people like you who've been tossed from doctor to doctor to doctor to specialist. Nobody can figure out what's wrong with them. They have all these normal labs, yet they feel like crap. Sometimes they have great days, sometimes they have terrible days. We'll get into that. But the biggest key for me was I had to create a mindset shift for myself. I was an assistant for a chiropractor, what now, maybe 10 years? 8 years ago, maybe? No, 10 years. Anyways, when I got hired on, I had no idea what chiropractic was. I had no idea what functional medicine was. And he just dabbled in it, but it was enough to introduce me to the concept of the why. Functional medicine is personalized medicine. It's all about finding the why to how you feel, whether you have a diagnosis or you don't, and then resolving that why so you can feel like $1,000,000 again. You can be the mom you want to be, the grandma you want to be, the dad, the uncle, the aunt, or better yet, you can even get pregnant without paying $20,000, $40,000 for some IVF treatment.
Yeah.
So it's really cool stuff. But my mindset shift had to change when I was in school. I had this patient come in from the community, and I was seeing a lot of people compared to my colleagues, but she'd come in, she was a mess. Terrible, terrible, terrible migraines for days on end. She had one at the time. So we had to find a black blanket to cover the window just to make sure we can remove as much light as possible. She had MRI scans, CT scans, blood work, every lab test under the sun, you name it. And all had come back normal. And we'll get into this normal labs concept but for her, it was like, okay, if I look at her the same way everybody else looks at her, I'm going to get the same results. And that wasn't okay with me. So I said to myself, how can I take these documents that we have, all of these blood work, all of the lab tests, all of the imaging, I mean, thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars sitting right here in our hands that were normal. They weren't providing any answers. And here she was barely functioning, been that way for years. So I figured out a way to train myself. And I've learned all of this post med school, which is what happens in life. You know, your real toolkit that you need happens outside of the school, the classroom.
Absolutely.
So that's how it went for me. And it's been really fun. I went from a brick and mortar practice to a completely virtual practice. I was using Zoom before Zoom was cool. And it was really helpful because now boundaries are no limit. Like I've got patients all over the world. So if you're like, I have normal labs and yet I don't feel like myself, We're going to get into that. And we're going to get into specifically autoimmune diseases and those people who have good days and bad days, even though they might not have a diagnosis. So that's my background. That's why I love functional medicine. And any patient in the world, I've heard 1,000 stories. And every time I'm like, oh my gosh, how are you even alive? Like, how are you even functioning? And it's just, you all have their own unique story, and nothing scares me anymore.
Yeah, I just love the concept because, and one of the things that I love that you had said, you didn't say it on the podcast, but you said this in, I can't remember if it was on your website or something that you had written. You said, let's get one thing straight here. One of the things I'm not trying to do is bash Western medicine, which is obviously not the goal, but I do think it's fair to acknowledge that Western medicine has its limitations. And I think that what you're doing sounds like what functional medicine does is we're going to stop putting a Band-Aid on this and we're going to rip out the core and figure out what is the actual issue.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's talk about two things you mentioned there. First, functional medicine is powerful when it's done right. And there
Mm.
are a lot of individuals in the healthcare industry who are coaches, naturopaths, doctors, like the whole gamut, who will call themselves functional medicine. And functional medicine requires more than one weekend seminar. And that's what we're finding a lot, is that people are, oh yeah, I practice functional medicine. Well, I just attended, one IFM conference or one XYZ conference. Functional medicine, it's tough. It gets very detailed and it's time consuming. It's literally taking the science, the biochemistry, the physiology, the biology. It's literally taking the science and applying it to our bodies. I always joke around and say, if I would have known I was talking about the Krebs cycle from high school biology every single day in my career, I might have paid a little bit more attention in high school biology. But that's literally what it is. It's not easy, and it's not a one size fits all process. So just be careful. Someone says they practice functional medicine, make sure you still do your due diligence and take a look into what they're doing. Because I've seen most of the people that I see have already tried functional medicine from somewhere else. So just be
Yes,
careful with that too.
that's a very important point.
It can be, pretty pricey too.
Oh, yeah.
So that's functional medicine people. We're not perfect and the profession isn't perfect. Same with Western medicine. Now, I like to say it as a toolkit, right? All of us medical practitioners, doctors, coaches, whatever it is, we all want to go into this business to help people. That's the goal, is to help people. The problem is we get into medical school and our toolkit is very limited. They teach us that unless you have multiple symptoms that fit underneath an umbrella, aka a diagnosis, I don't know what to do with you. Because unless I can give you a diagnosis, now I can reach into my toolkit of pharmaceuticals and tell you what pill to take or what injection to receive, or like Humira for RA or Lyrica for fibromyalgia, or you name it, metformin for diabetes, like whatever is inside their toolkit, that's what they were given during medical school. Now, the
Hmm.
thing is, it's not your doctor's fault. It's not your doctor's fault. It's not the listener's doctor's fault. It's not whoever is out there trying to blame their doctor. It's not their fault. It's the fault of the schooling. The schooling is what has failed us. The system is what has failed us because the toolkit is so limited. Unless they go out and they learn all this additional stuff on their own to expand their toolkit, now it's like you go into your doctor and instead of them saying to you, okay, you have diabetes, go see a dietitian, now they can help coach you in the right ways versus going off to see another doctor. Or another aspect to look at it is we have all these specialists, right? Endometriosis specialists, GI specialists, ENT
Hmm.
specialists. When in reality, our body is one incredible machine with multiple systems working together as one. So you fine tuning and saying, oh, it's my hormones. It might be your hormones, but all of your other systems are playing a role in your hormones too. It's not just your thyroid. Your thyroid is just one gland in a system that's being affected by all the other systems in your body.
Right.
Make sense?
Right. It makes perfect sense. What doesn't make sense to me is the way in which we do have so many specialists because we're almost taking away from the body as one whole organism where it's like you affect one part of the system, the other part is affected. And I agree. It's not necessarily the fault of the doctors because that's the toolkit that they were given. Like I went to, I was recently diagnosed with an autoimmune disease called HS. I'm not sure. Have you heard of it? Hidradenitis suppurativa.
No.
So it's like, oh, it's excruciatingly painful. It's an autoimmune disease that results in like cysts on like your body,
Like on the external or the internal part?
external and internal.
Okay.
It can be in your armpits, it can be in your groin, on your buttocks, even on your like outer inner labia, scrotum. And it's an autoimmune disease and they have no idea what causes it. Like there's not a whole lot known about it. And I went to a dermatologist who was supposed to specialize in this autoimmune disease. And her response was like, okay, we're going to put you on Humira. And I was like, hell no, we're not putting me on
Take this
Humira.
injection for the rest of your life and we'll, quote, manage your symptoms.
Right. And then I went to the functional medicine specialist and was like, oh, okay.
I get it now.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. So when it comes to autoimmune disease, any autoimmune disease, I mean, what we're learning more and more is depending on your resource that you go to, there's 80 to 100 different diagnoses that are autoimmune, right? Now, the insurance codes, the amount of diagnoses that you can bill insurances continues to grow. And the reason why it continues to grow is because we have more people showing more weird symptoms that we haven't found an umbrella to clump all those symptoms underneath yet. So now we have to create new umbrellas to clump all the stuff underneath. And the coding is just getting more and more. The amounts of diagnoses are just getting more and more. And this is specifically with autoimmune disease. For example, like in 5 or 10 years, I would imagine the endometriosis and even PCOS, common hormonal issues, are going to be on that autoimmune spectrum because of the more we learn about them, the more they fall under this component, this umbrella. So when it comes to autoimmune, whether you have a diagnosis or you're one of those people that you have great days and you have bad days, that would be this autoimmune. Or think about MS, multiple sclerosis. People have MS flares, right? There is a commercial that teaches us that if you have an MS flare, you can go in and get this injection. Well, what's happening during these flares? What causes these flares? So let's dive into my 3-step process to stopping autoimmune disease in its tracks. Now, I want to preface that and say we're not curing autoimmune disease. We're going to put, Alyssa, what you're experiencing in your history. If I've got a 39-year-old mom who has MS, which is the truth, we're about halfway through her process right now, and she's feeling like $1 million. And I'm really excited for her because in the summertime, when it's the heat and she can't go outside, she couldn't go outside. If it was above 72 degrees, it would cause this and flare for her. This summer is going to be a different story. She's going to be able to go enjoy the summer activities with her teenage kids. And it'll be the first time in a while that she's been able to do that because we figured out the process of her autoimmune. We kicked it to the curb, and now it's going to be in her history in just a few more months. And anybody can do this. You just have to know how to do it and what's causing your autoimmune cases. So my first step that I like to take a look at, what I encourage people to take a look at, is the first step is you have to identify the trigger, right? What triggered the onset of the autoimmune disease? What triggered the Hashimoto's, the rheumatoid arthritis, the psoriasis, whatever it is out there?
Right. Now, potentially the PCOS, the endometriosis.
Yeah, the list goes on and on and on. Autoimmune, period, right? Identify the trigger. Now, there are multiple types of triggers. And one of the triggers that everybody likes to blame on is food. Is it organic? Is it GMO? Is it clean? Like whatever they want to call healthy eating, food can be a trigger. So eliminating the food sensitivity culprits, that's a great place to start. It's not a great place to end. I don't know about you, Alyssa, but I like food. And Part of me enjoying food and enjoying life is to be able to eat things on holidays and birthdays and not being so strict throughout my day that I can't enjoy the social interactions that we associate with food.
Yes, and it can't be an end point, especially for all of those who are in recovery from an eating disorder and are trying to establish some sense of intuitive eating in their lives. It's like,
Yeah. And functional medicine, I just did a podcast on this. It's coming out in a few weeks on my podcast. But we had an honest discussion about food because so many times I have people coming in, they're trying to lose weight and they're eating like 1,200 calories a day and they're exhausted and they can't get to the gym. Well, no freaking duh. You're not feeding your body anything.
Your metabolism shut down, your body's storing fat, and you're not going to lose a pound.
Yes. But their personal trainer put them on this, and I could just go on a rant about all of this stuff.
Okay, you and me both.
So then we've got the eliminators, the elimination diets, right? Huge, big deal in functional medicine. In fact, I would say functional medicine is probably the culprit to this food madness that we've been having, right? Because we teach, you can't have dairy, gluten, soy, peanut butter, eggs. Like, what the heck are you supposed to eat then? You're eliminating all this stuff. I've had people eliminate fruits and vegetables from their gardens because their food sensitivity test came back positive for regular vegetables. And our gut needs variety. So yes, food can be a trigger, but don't just say, I can't eat XYZ for the rest of my life. Remove them, put your body through some work, and I'll teach you what that work needs to be so you can enjoy food again, because food is supposed to be enjoyed. It's part of life. Life isn't to just survive. It's to enjoy life, right? So there's a trigger, there's a culprit. But more often than not, what I find, especially in autoimmune cases, is some type of hidden infection. And this infection is low grade, so it's not going to come up positive on a test. So if you were to go to your doctors and if you were to get an Epstein-Barr virus test, mono, the number one trigger for Hashimoto's, it will probably come back negative. You want it to be negative because if it's positive, you literally can't walk up 5 stairs. That's how exhausted you are. I have a 17-year-old boy who just got diagnosed with Epstein-Barr virus and it came back positive. And they, if you've ever heard or you've gotten that diagnosis, you know that they say, okay, now go home and sleep for 3 months. Good luck kicking it. We got nothing for you, right?
It's awful. Yep.
Yeah. So this viral infection is really, really big. It's not active enough to be positive, but it's still there to the point that your body's fighting it. And if your body's constantly fighting something, you're not going to thrive. Whether it's losing weight, getting pregnant, combating autoimmune disease, or even just feeling like yourself again, 90% of the time, it's this hidden infection that's causing you to be yourself. And that triggered the autoimmune disease, right?
How do you find the infection?
I'll tell you that too. So along with the viral infection, we got bacterial infections, we have fungal infections like candida overgrowth, and we have parasitic infections. So there's multiple types of infections. Now you can identify if you have a low-grade hidden infection based off of the labs you already have in your possession. This lab, it's called a CBC with differential, right? The CBC is like the regular standard blood test that every doctor takes as just a precursor. Let's just figure out what's going on, But just make sure that if your doctor's taking a CBC, they check the box that says with differential, because I really get peeved when I'm requesting medical records when there's no differential, because those puzzle pieces included in that lab portion are so crucial, so crucial. And your insurance will pay for it. Just make sure they check the right box. So the CBC, if you have it, go grab it. If it's on your patient portal, look it up. That number one marker, the very top marker, it's called white blood cell count, WBC. That white blood cell count is going to tell you if you have a low-grade hidden infection. But I can guarantee you it's normal. You want it to be normal. If it's not normal, that means your labs are, you have a disease. They have some disease they can plaster next to your name and give you a pill to manage it for the rest of your life. So you want normal labs. They might be normal, but they're not ideal. They're not optimal. Okay. So what I'm going to tell you is the range for the white blood cell count, WBC, the optimal range. If you fall less than 5 or greater than 8, you have a low-grade hidden infection. Make sense? So white blood cell count needs to be between 5 and 8. If it's less than 5 or greater than 8, we're dealing with this low-grade hidden infection. Don't go running to your doctors to tell them that you have an infection because they're going to laugh in your face. They're not trained to look at labs like this, so I'm teaching you how to do it. So you have the power in your own hands, right? Once you see that you have, say your white blood cell count is 4.9 or 4.1 or 16 or 9, whatever it is, now you know that your body's fighting something. What is that something? Now you got to jump below several markers. And we're going to get to this. I'm going to keep it very, very basic and simple. We're going to keep it to neutrophils, which is this marker that neutrophils are responsible for fighting bacteria. So if your neutrophil percentage is greater than 60%, you're fighting a bacterial infection. Then the marker right below that is going to say lymphocytes. Lymphocytes fight viruses. That's what they do. So if your lymphocytes are greater than 30%, your body's fighting a virus. And you can look back over the last 10 years of your labs, which is what I love to do. I love to just pull medical records and trace patterns because you can see, as sometimes my blood work I got taken tells me that I have a bacterial infection. Other times my blood work says I have a viral infection, which is very common to have them both. And then at other times, my blood work has this pattern. And I want to teach you the pattern because it's autoimmune pattern. Now, neutrophils, you want them to be 60%, right? Or less. That's the ideal. Now, lymphocytes, you want to have them to be 30% or less. That's the ideal. So if we're thinking 60-30, that's a 2-to-1 ratio, correct?
Yep.
Okay. Now, what if your neutrophils are like 44% and your lymphocytes are like 42%? That's a 1-to-1 ratio, right? Autoimmune. So if you see a 1-to-1 ratio between the neutrophils and the lymphocytes, you're dealing with an autoimmune flare. When that blood work was taken, your body was in fighting mode. Your immune system was fighting something. And typically, the lymphocytes are the elevated ones, and that viral component is the trigger. When you hear about these flares or these good days or bad days, it's really a viral component in most cases. That virus is more active at sometimes and then less active at other times. When it's more active, your days suck. You have the MS flare, the Crohn's flare, the Hashimoto's brain fog flare, whatever it may be. But when it's less dormant, less active, now you feel more like yourself. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
All within regular blood work that you have in your possession that you were told is normal.
Right.
That's how cool labs are. That's why I love the numbers.
I know. And it's so empowering to be able to I don't know, that anybody can kind of look at it and now go through it and be like, oh, this is what's happening.
Yeah, it totally makes sense. So along with the infection, that's a big component of the trigger. We got multiple other triggers like toxins and metals and mold, even mold in our house, mold in our environment. I live in a 4-season area. Springtime is mold season. I've had kids, teenagers specifically, who would come in and his knuckles would swell up, but only during the spring. And they'd go into the rheumatologist and they'd get the blood work and his ANAs would come back normal. It would all come back normal, but the rheumatologist wanted to diagnose him with rheumatoid arthritis anyways, because, it's looks like it feels like it, his joints hurt, but they only happened in the springtime. And it didn't clue into me until I went to a seminar. I was talking to another practitioner about this. And and he said to me, do you live in a 4-season environment? I said, yeah, but it's a desert. It's Utah. We're desert. And he said, well, what about the springtime when everything is frozen, now unthaws? I was like, whoa. I never thought about that. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Mold. And when we chopped down our trees a couple, I guess it would be last summer now, last summer, a couple of the trees in our backyard just mold infested.
Wow.
And my husband's a roofer, and he says a lot of times they'll get on the roof to re-roof. They will tear off the shingles, tear off the sheetrock underneath it, tear off the wood, and then underneath the wood, they find black mold.
Oh.
So don't just rule it out. Like, mold is another trigger and it needs to be dealt with. And sometimes people have to move because that's just the bottom line of it.
Right.
So there's your triggers for starting or instigating an autoimmune culprit, autoimmune disease. Okay. Now, that's step number 1. Once you figure the triggers, got to get rid of them. Number 2, calming the immune system down, right? Once you pull the triggers away, now it's the immune system who was the whole culprit to begin with. It's not the thyroid. It's not your small and large intestine. It's not your nervous system. It's not wherever the disease is happening. What's happening in all autoimmune disease is it's the immune system attacking a specific point in your body. And wherever it's attacking, well, that's what your genes are there for. So if you have Hashimoto's running in your family, well, your genes told your immune system to attack your thyroid. My family, it's Parkinson's. Our genes tell us to attack the immune system to attack the nervous system, right? So that's how it all works. We're all about what's wrong with the immune system. Why is it just given up and started to attack whatever it feels like attacking? And then once you can figure out the triggers of it, now you got to calm the immune system down. And there's a couple ingredients that you can use really easily to calm that immune system down. And one of my favorites, my all-time favorite, is vitamin D. Vitamin D is like the best supplement in the world. If you're going to just say you have to take something, you got to take vitamin D.
Yes.
And don't just take it at the wimpy 2,000 to 5,000 IUs per day level. That's wimpy. You're not going to get anything from it. I mean, more than what you would without taking it. But what I've seen in the research, literally, research with vitamin D and autoimmune, it's huge. I'm going to tell you my vitamin D protocol. This is what I would do, what I do with patients, and what I blast all over podcasts and social media, and because it's that powerful. But I have had people tell me they have found my email. Strangers have reached out and said, you're telling people these high levels of vitamin D, they're going to become toxic. You're right. They'll become toxic if you stay on them for 5, 6, 7 years. I'm talking 3 months. So a short time period, I'm going to say we're going to jack that vitamin D up. It's going to calm your immune system down. And just by this one vitamin, aka hormone, you're going to feel way different. Now, if you were to say, because I'm a numbers girl, right? The vitamin D normal lab range is from 30 to 100. It's kind of a big range.
Yeah.
Guarantee you're going to feel a lot better if your vitamin D is at closer to 100 than it is in the 30s. Depression, you can kick it to the curb with vitamin D. Anxiety, same thing. Autoimmune, same thing. Vitamin D is that powerful when you take it at the right dosage. And your number, my ideal number for vitamin D is around 80. So if you have a vitamin D status, go look at it in your labs. And if you're less than, say, 70 or 60, take some vitamin D, take a higher dose than normal. But from all of the labs I've seen, and I've seen thousands of people's of labs, I have only seen a handful who are even above 50.
Yeah.
Everybody is so depleted in vitamin D. And then the prescription is 50,000 IUs of vitamin D per week. It's better than nothing, but it's not going to change the way you feel, and it's not going to change your labs either. It will bump them up a little bit, maybe 10, 20 points, but it's not going to take you from 30 to 80 in 3 months.
Yeah.
25,000 IUs of vitamin D per day for a month will. Okay, so write this down, listeners.
25,000.
25,000 IUs of vitamin D per day for a month. And then month 2, back down to 20,000. And then month 3, back down to 15,000. And then maintain more at a 10,000 dosage. You're not going to get toxic off of this, I promise.
I mean, it's vitamin D.
And it's a short time period. And the research I found, there was a doctor who did He was working with autoimmune. Specifically, he used vitiligo, psoriasis. MS was the other one. Yeah, so those big three. And he was like, you know what? I want to see what vitamin D does specifically on these three instances. So his dosage was 35,000 IUs of vitamin D for 3 months. That's what he used.
Wow.
Literally, vitamin D was enough to put more than half of the patients in the study, their autoimmune symptoms, into remission.
Wow.
That's the power of vitamin D. Easiest thing to take. It's like the only thing I will always take. And I'm not.
It really is the easiest thing to take. I know.
Yeah. So vitamin D is a big one. Then we have essential fatty acids, things like omega-3, omega-6. Those good, healthy fats will also calm down the immune system. And then this also calms down the immune system, or probiotics. I always want to put an asterisk next to the probiotics because so many people think, well, I just need to take a probiotic and it's going to solve my gut issues. And I'm going to take the same probiotic for the rest of my life and it's going to be fine. Right? Wrong. So probiotics are great. Just don't take them because you can, and don't take the same one forever, which leads us into step number 3, right? Step number 3, once we identify the trigger and removes it, then we calm the immune system down. Now our immune system is literally our gut. So we got to rehab our gut.
Yep.
Don't just take a probiotic forever. Your gut needs variety. Taking the same probiotic for over like 3 months, I always say, is not doing much because it's the same strains, the same quantity. Switch it up, right? Now, the gut is also going to get harped on by many, many people because the more we learn about it, the more we realize that our gut is our second brain. It's pretty powerful. So you got to make sure you do the gut right. And your gut is like your fingerprint. It's unique to you. So make sure whatever you're doing is personalized to you. So there's your 3-step kick autoimmune diseases to the curb kind of thing.
It's amazing. And it makes so much sense. And I can't help but wonder, like, vitamin D really is. It's magical.
Yes.
We're talking about triggers. Is it also possible that, like, chronic toxicity and chronic stress can be triggers, or does it have to be some type of like low grade virus or infection?
No, when we think about triggers, think about multiple. There's usually multiple triggers. And the reason why is we all have these cups. We're born with our cup quarter full or half full or whatever. And the more we have experienced life, the fuller our cup gets. And then finally, at some point, something is the trigger that makes the cup overflow. That's the onset of the disease.
Okay.
So it's a multiplicity of triggers. But the big thing is when I look back in the labs, there is that viral component. You're going to have pregnancy trigger. A lot of mamas will say, I was fine for baby number 1 and 2, and then number 3, my body's just gone to crap and I don't know what's wrong. Metabolic instances like PCOS and endometriosis, they can trigger it. Trauma is a big one. Trauma can trigger or be a trigger along that process. So there's a whole lot of triggers that are possible, even stress. Now, I want to caveat that stress because I don't know if you're like me, Alyssa, but you said you work a 9 to 5 and then you do the podcast. And, life is life. Life is stressful.
Life is stressful.
And if you were to say to me, Dr. Kylie, your life is too stressful. You have to find something to eliminate to make it less stressful. I'm going to laugh at you and I'm going to say, haha, you're funny. No, I'm a doctor, a mom, an entrepreneur, and I work with the difficult patients, right?
Right.
Worldwide. So I'm not changing that. And I'm not going to change that. So I don't expect my patients or people who I work with or who are even listening to podcasts I'm on to change that. What you can do is you can instigate things like 5 minutes of meditation. But for me, I'm lucky to get 5 minutes by myself in the shower. So
right.
You can instigate those things. But what I do want to say is, as far as stress is concerned, if we can find an internal stressor and eliminate what's causing stress on the inside of our bodies, now it can handle the external stressors a lot easier.
That makes a lot of sense.
And now it takes the pressures off of moms with 3 kids or grandmas. Like my mom's a grandma and she's about to have 5 kids and they're 5 living with her between my 2 brothers. So life is stressful and you're not going to just eliminate it. But if we can help our bodies from the inside out feel and conquer the external stressors, then life will be a lot better.
Right. Because there's no such thing as getting rid of stress. There's just no such thing. Not in the world that we live in. There will always be stress.
Yeah, there's too many outside influences.
Right. We have much more control over healing the inside of ourselves than we do over kind of like what comes our way in terms of external stress.
Yep. Beautifully said.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you for that. The autoimmune disease world is just one that I feel is so misunderstood, but I think you did a phenomenal job of kind of summarizing like just 3 steps to kind of like beating it, because I really think it's like finding the trigger. It's not just throwing pills for this symptom and that symptom. It's like finding the trigger.
Yeah. Once you can do that, once you can find the trigger, calm the immune system down, and then rebuild the immune system, which is your gut, you're ready to rock and roll. And I've seen it time and time and time again. So if you're listening to this and you don't have a diagnosis, or you do, just know that you don't have to survive life. You don't have to survive managing whatever it is. You can thrive and you can enjoy life.
It's not a death sentence. And I truly, before discovering functional medicine, I truly felt that my like HS and my like autoimmune disease was like a death sentence. So certainly doesn't have to be. So thank you so much for coming on today. That was really helpful. Love talking about this topic. And so you see people from all over the world. So if people want to find you, do they just go directly to your website?
They can go to my website, but the best place to learn more is the podcast. And the podcast is called Beyond the Diagnosis with me, Dr. Kylie. So that's the first place to go. Is go check that out, learn more, dive in. There's several episodes on autoimmune diseases and a whole lot more. And then the other place is you can look up, find anything you want on the website, drkylieburton.com. I'm also on Facebook, Dr. Kylie Burton on Facebook. Those are the podcasts and Facebook are where I'm most active. And then, of course, if you want to join any of the boot camps, the programs, the membership, go find them all on the website, drkylieburton.com.
And I will link all of that information in the show notes. Thank you very much for coming on today. I appreciate you making the time to educate all of us. And I appreciate the work that you do.
Thanks, Alyssa.
Thanks for listening, everyone. For more information, please head over to lightaftertrauma.com, or you can also follow us on social media. On Instagram, we are at lightaftertrauma, and on Twitter, it is at lightafterpod. And if you're on Facebook, please be sure to join our Facebook group. It is a private community where trauma survivors are able to connect and chat with one another. That Facebook group is called Light After Trauma, so just look us up on Facebook and be sure to join. Lastly, please head over to patreon.com/lightaftertrauma to support our show. We are asking for $5 a month, which is the equivalent to a cup of coffee at Starbucks. So please head on over again. That's patreon.com/lightaftertrauma. Thank you, and we appreciate your support.